Hello, everyone. For this module, we'll be talking about the estimating process and preliminary procedures. I'm going to review over the objectives for this module, and I did decide to break this up into two parts. So this first part, we're going to first start out by talking about goals and objectives of a contractor's estimating department. It's very important to, especially if you decide if you want to get into estimating, if this is the role that you'd like to take on, but as well understanding what are the goals for an estimator, what are their objectives on a day-to-day basis, and then we want to go into identifying what are some of the various sources of information that you can actually go out and look for projects that you could bid on. And then want to distinguish open bidding from actually closed bidding. A few other things we'll talk about is to describe the process of pre-qualifying bidders and explain why it is done. And then I like to describe contractors' marketing strategies and explain why these strategies are pursued. And then somewhere in this area, I'll probably go into part 2, and we'll begin to list and explain the factors considered when a contractor is actually deciding whether or not to actually submit a bid on a project. We're going to explain what is involved in a preliminary review of bid documents and the use of a query list. And really just get into describe the purpose of an estimator site visit. I mean, why do you go and visit a site? It seems as though that's not even important. So we want to discuss why should you do a site visit, and then begin to list the items that should be considered on a local project and on a remote project. And last here, kind of just go into talking about what are some of the various benefits of actually using estimating software, some of the technology that's out there today. And there's tons of technology that you can use to do estimating takeoff. But we're going to talk about that and kind of what does the industry have to say about using some of the software that's out there today. So let's begin. Let's first talk a little bit about the systematic approach. And this is really very key to the decision of whether to bid on a project or not. Whenever a construction company, they look into a new project that's coming up, there are a few factors that they really want to consider. Probably one of the number one things that I would consider any company they're always going to look at the dollar signs. Am I going to be able to make a profit on this project if I take it on? A few other things is just maximizing your accuracy, your productivity. Those are things that you want to consider. If you have too many projects that are going on, then perhaps you will need to back away from it. But if you feel as though you need to go into having more projects on the books, then this is something that you would probably pursue. Other things to consider is, what's going on with the economy at the time. Are you in an area where we're plentiful with laborers, or do we have a shortage of laborers? And those are things to really consider when you're bidding on projects. Also, how far away is this project? Is it really far away? Do I have the resources in place to bid on this particular project? And also effective estimating department utilization. I mean, that's pretty much what I'm just saying about resources that are available. Also, on top of that is, what kind of staff do I have on hand? Do I have the appropriate team in place to do this project? It could be that you have a lot of people already on other projects, and if you don't have the correct personnel and the people that are going to be able to work on that project, and maybe it's a healthcare type project, and you need to make sure that you have the right people in place to work on that type of project. And then just overall, the company-wide cooperative approach to it. It's going to be very important that you create this team environment whenever you do try to pursue any kind of project. Not just talking about the company, but also talking about internal and external parties. So we're looking at your project managers, the superintendents, possible subcontractors that you're going to be working with. And the list just kind of goes on and on, from vendors to suppliers and what have you. Another thing to consider that's not on this list that I do hear a lot in our industry is, what kind of client? Is this a client that you've worked with in the past? Have you had a lot of problems with that client? And those are some things to really, really consider, because if you've had issues with a client in the past, perhaps, you would back away from that particular project. This slide right here is basically a diagram that maps out the decision process of whether to bid on a project or not. And, it is a process, and I don't want you to think that it's always just cut and dry. Oh, we're going to bid on this project. It shouldn't be that. You should do your due diligence. And when I say due diligence, I mean do your homework, do your research, really looking to see, can we manage this project? Is this going to bring us profit? Or are we going to run into a lot of problems? I mean, you may even do what is called a actual risk analysis, where you go in and you look at all the various assumptions to see, what are going to be the problems. If there are too many problems that are adding up against you, then you might want to back away from this project, or you might decide to do something like considering, or there's some alternatives. Maybe this becomes a joint venture type project, or, maybe there are just some other things that you could do to approach it. So it's really you creating this game plan before you just step over into saying, yeah, I'm going to bid on this project. But this is a diagram. It is in your textbook, Figure 2-1. Or if I ever decide to change this textbook, I will have it as a handout. But just understand that this is something that you could follow, and it's a really good process, I think, overall. Now, let's just talk about public and private bids a little bit. Now, we reviewed this already in Intro to Construction class, so you should have a good understanding about the difference between the two. With our public bids, public authorities are really required to comply with regulations that control the award of construction contracts, okay? The requirement usually means that they have to use an open bid system. And that really is one in which it allows a lot of various contractors to actually bid on that particular job. So it's an open type of system, okay? And whoever the client and the architect they decide should win that job, and there's various ways in which they might go about that. There could be a qualifications type of thing. You may be brought in for a bid interview if you're shortlisted, and there's 4 of you that have to go against each other. So there's a couple of things that might come along with that. But overall, this is a really good system, and it's a really good system ethically speaking, because it's not showing favoritism. It's giving everybody an opportunity to bid on this particular project if they are a responsive bidder. And when I say responsive bidder, I mean that you have everything in place, all the resources, that you are capable and able to bid on this project, and knowing that you have everything in place to do so. So these are just some of the bulleted points that I pointed out. There'll be some sort of an advertisement, web pages, there are government notices, construction associations and news services, bid information services. So all of those are things that you could refer to in order to find out about bid information. I actually took the time to break out a Dodge report for you. This is something that you could find on the internet. And usually the way this is done is through subscription. There are a few things that you could do, though. If you haven't subscribed, you can actually see some projects, but it doesn't give you all the detail and all the information, such as if you want the plans, the specifications, and anything else that would go along with it. But what's kind of cool about this is that, you could go to where it says on the first page, there's a place that says go to lead projects. You go to that area and it brings you to this page, and it'll show you, wherever you are located in the United States. So I picked Texas. I selected Texas, and it's telling you how many projects that you could possibly bid on in Texas, which is a lot, as you can see. And then if you click on Texas, it takes you to this big map of Texas. and it breaks it up. I imagine it breaks it up by counties. So if you click on whatever county that you want, it'll show you how many the projects that you could actually bid on within that county. And if you go forward, this is kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like once you click on it. And it's going to be a lot of different ones. What I did was I just kind of cropped it out so you could see just one of the projects. But this is called Somerset Elementary School Cafeteria, and it's an addition. It's telling you actually the project type. It's also saying that, you know, this is a middle school educational type of project. The phase is general contractor for bidding. It's valuation. It's telling you about that, the location, where it's located, and also the bid date, which is going to be January 12th of 2017. Once you click on the previous slide, then you'll see it takes you to another area where you can actually view the project even in more depth. You can click on View This Project, and the only way that you can click on it, though, is if you have an actual subscription with Dodge Reports. So it does give you a little bit of information about what's going on within a county, which, I mean, that's great. But the one thing that you would have to do is to subscribe, and most contractors are going to subscribe within at least a year, and it kind of makes sense to do that. Okay. Now let's talk about private bids. Private bids are a little bit different in that the owners have actually more flexibility in choosing who they want to actually invite to bid. It's very restricted as opposed to the open bid system. Point being, that's why they call it a closed bid system. With this type of system, the number of companies invited is usually a lot smaller in comparison to your open bid system. And usually it's going to be people that the owner typically knows or they've done business with in the past. So that's why you see as an invitation. A lot of schools typically, if you're a private school institution, you'd see something like this. But, you know, it's a little bit of a different setup. Business contracts and news items. I mean, there's various ways that you can look into projects like this, though. Architectural engineering consultants typically bring this to the table. Construction news services, construction associations, plan service centers. Also, there's bid information services as well. But like I said, this is a lot more selective when it comes to private bid type of projects, okay? Next, we'll just do a quick little overview here. So we have the closed bidding, and that's, like I said, it's direct bid invitation. Avoids having a large number of bids, as I stated earlier. They're pre-qualified bids from pre-qualified contractors only. There are different processes. So, for instance, you could be that there's a pre-qualification type of thing that goes on. And they want to look at all of your credentials. You'd have to turn in various things that they want to see. And typically this happens if they don't particularly know you. Sometimes this tends to happen. And then construction news services, they offer bid reporting services and convey project status as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that are out there to help you find projects to bid on. And so I just wanted to bring this to your attention, but this should be like a review and recap of what we did in Intro to Construction.